So I'm so excited to welcome everyone, panelists and attendees to our session on habits and hooks, changing consumer behavior. And we're gonna get started. I'm Lindsey Boyle. I'm the moderator for today's session, and I'm a partner in an insights and innovation agency called The Sound. And most recently, I'm founder of Circular Citizen, and I'm really driven to understand the people side of the circular economy. So joining me today are Karen Winterich, who's a professor of marketing at Penn State, and she's going to offer an academic perspective on the psychology of behavior change and talk about her research specifically as it pertains to learnings from recycling. And then we also have Brian Reilly, who's the CEO of Muuse, and he's going to provide a very entrepreneurial perspective on his smart solution for reusable takeaway containers that is global. It's in Hong Kong and Singapore and San Francisco as markets right now, and growing and highly successful. He's gonna talk about the behavior change that's been required to make the Muuse model successful. So I'll start by asking each of you to just briefly talk about the behavior, I guess the behavior or the habits that you're most focused on understanding and changing in your work, just so that the audience has a good grounding on what you're going to be able to speak to expertly. And I'll start with you, Karen.
Great, thank you, Lindsey. So most recently, I've been doing work on trying to understand how we can improve recycling rates, but I also am looking a little bit more into repair behavior too, because we know recycling isn't going to be the end all, right? We need to do a little bit more than that. So recycling and repair is a lot of my focus.
Great. And how about you, Brian?
Yeah, so in our world, I think what we're focused on is almost this 5-year vision where within a city, just about everything that we're taking today that's single use, so something we're using for anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour, and then disposing of, that is then going to a landfill or maybe in some rare situations getting recycled, is being switched out with a reusable product. So we've started in the food and beverage space, so think coffee cups, takeaway containers, drink bottles as well. But I think when you imagine this 5-year vision, you can picture so many things that you're picking up from the supermarket, from convenience stores, from a wide range of stores, now switching to a reusable product. So we're trying to help usher that in and help make that almost as convenient as single use is today, but really just bring a little bit more awareness and attention to how we consume, how we're using things.
Fantastic. It's going to be an excellent discussion. I'm so excited to dive in. I will say that as we were preparing this panel, both of you, well, all of us felt really strongly that we can't rely on the consumer or people to really make the circular economy happen. It truly is a system level collaboration that we need. And I think many of the sessions at Circularity 20 have underscored that theme. So I want to acknowledge that, but because we only have a short time, I really want to dive deep on psychology, on people, and really kind of get at what are the successes that you've had in your work and your research that we can apply to support people in the behavior change and have them get on board as excited and active participants in the circular economy. So that's really the context. I want to invite our audience to chime in with questions. I'll be monitoring the chat. We won't have a lot of time for questions, but I will be monitoring the chat for questions, and I will be putting in some links to resources from Brian and from Karen as we go through the discussion. So I'll kick off, and I want to start with Brian, because when we started talking about Muuse, I learned early on that you have an incredible return rate for your reusable containers. So I want to jump right in. You told me you have a 98% return rate. So I want to invite you to talk about what are the hooks that you have put together in a combination that is, getting to that magical return rate. And while you talk about that, I'm going to put up an image so people can see the Muuse takeaway containers.
All right, thank you, Lindsey. So, I'll be very, very transparent. Our 98% return rate, I think, is a function of who our first users are and who the first consumers who are really adopting our service and our system. And it's probably many of the same type of people that are tuning into this conference right now. They're really the true believers, the people who are sustainability advocates. So to them, this is a service they've been waiting for. It's something they've been excited for, kind of promoting for some time, probably have their own reusable containers and have been using them, pretty regularly. So I think we're fortunate in this early phase to have, the real pioneers out there being people who are really, really, really aligned on the mission that we're all working towards. I think what also helps us is we're using very, very nice products. So thoughtfully designed stainless steel coffee cups, a really nice composite with a bamboo lid food to go box. So there's very little room to think that this is something you would use and then throw away. It's a higher quality, elevated experience. And then on top of that, how it works in our system, if you don't return that product in 7 days, you'll essentially get a message from us that lets you know it needs to come back to the network. If you don't return it by 14 days, we'll then charge you essentially a penalty fee for that product. So there is a financial incentive, but I think at this stage of things, it's really our customers and it's the core users who are just delighted to have this service and are taking it very seriously.
What did you know about them, about your who you were trying to reach before you started Muuse? What did you know about them that was kind of allowed you to build it initially as a?
Yeah, I don't know. We had a lot of belief that this was coming, just based on how much growing global concern there was around the world for moving beyond single-use plastics. I mean, that was the inspiration for this. Was 3 years ago, really noticing the world starting to really care about this issue, and then seeing on the other side of that tremendous optimism for all of the change that was going to come. But we started our first pilot about 2 years ago, 3 months after we had gotten excited about the concept. And at that point, we were so excited about displacing the 500 billion single-use plastic cups thrown away every year, the 500 billion plastic bottles, that we in our minds thought this was just gonna be like a rocket ship right away. And I remember the first time we brought our reusable coffee cups to a cafe in Bali, we were like, oh my God, we're not gonna be ready for the volumes. Like, are we ready for this? And then that first day, maybe one person checked out one of the cups. And I say that in a way that's grounding, in that, every single time we've launched a new city or a new partner, there's always been this excitement. Are we ready? The volumes are going to be so big. But in reality, it's going to require such behavior change, and it's going to require each of us to start to slowly change our everyday routines before it really becomes the norm. Now, different today than 2.5 years ago, you now have some of the biggest brands in the world very excited about this, pushing this forward. You have city governments figuring out what they can do to support reuse. You have so many of the big environmental organizations pushing it. So all of the right people are thinking about these challenges. And I think it's going to take collectively all of us actually committing to behavior change. And I think, the quote that's resonated with me the most lately is, when I was clever, I wanted to change the world. As I've become wise, I'm changing myself. And just to remind ourselves that, yeah, we all want this beautiful future, but it's going to take work. It's going to take, it's going to take additional attention on our everyday actions, our everyday behaviors. So yeah, we've tried so many different things to kind of get to the point we are. And I think there's a lot of reason to be very excited for the next 3 years and where this is going. And primarily all of the wonderful stakeholders who are getting behind this.
Mhm. Just to recap for anyone who's joining us, so I wanted to just outline the hooks that you have said that have worked really well for your kind of front runner users. So you know, that it's opt-in. You didn't talk about that specifically, but I learned that you don't have to go to a cafe and be forced to take a Muuse container. It's opt-in. They look beautiful, so people want to use them and be seen with them, but also people are motivated by how beautiful they are to not throw them away. They don't feel disposable or look disposable. And then you also said there's kind of a penalty. So there's like a motivation in how they look, but then there's a penalty that kicks in up to 10 days later.
Yeah, we don't like to use penalty because we don't want to be the people inducing anxiety to our users. And we've tried to think of how can we make this more of a positive incentivization as opposed to something where, oh my gosh, I need to return this. But I think what we're finding is people are super excited for the opportunity to use the service. Those that opt in, there's still a large portion of the population, and we'll watch them in cafes that are just caught up in their day. They have so many other things on their mind, and they're not necessarily ready to step into a new behavior change. But I think with time, it's going to become more convenient, easier, and there'll be additional incentives to bring them in as well.
Excellent. I want to now bring in Karen, because Brian's really talking about innovation and kind of being on the cutting edge of behavior change. But Karen, you and I have talked more about the social influence that can be used as a motivator for behavior change. Maybe in situations where you're wanting to bring people along, maybe not the early adopters, maybe people that are more the laggers in terms of behavior change. So share with us what you've learned from your research about the influence of social norms or that kind of social influence.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Brian even kind of referenced it, like it's not, maybe Muuse might not be the norm just yet, right? So we kind of has these people that are really motivated to change, environmental behavior, and hopefully it's becoming the norm, right? It's catching on. It will be there, I'm sure. But I think once things you get those, early adopters, you really can use that behavior to get everyone else on board. So, it might be that the Starbucks cup and that logo is really kind of identity relevant. People want to have that showing. But once the Muuse cup, people will feel like they're not fitting in. They're on the outside if they're not using the Muuse cup. And there's lots of research to support this. There's a study about towel reuse in hotels, which shows that when you tell people that the majority of people in that hotel room reuse their towel, it can increase the towel reuse rate. Similarly, things in neighborhoods, you're a nonprofit or a government organization trying to get people to, say, recycle their grass clippings, having stickers that say, I compost, I recycle, can also increase that. Or even telling people on door hangers that the majority of people in that neighborhood support it will make it feel like that's the normative, that's the socially appropriate thing to do, and they'll be more likely to engage in that behavior. So at Penn State, it might be telling students, look, Penn Staters recycle, and freshmen, of course, want to fit in. Everyone wants to be part of that culture. And so, it won't work, to be clear, if the majority are not doing it. You can't say that the majority are, or you can't tell people the majority aren't. That can actually backfire and be rather ineffective, because they're like, if no one else is doing it, why will I? But once you reach that cusp of enough of the early adopters kind of signaling to everyone that this is the thing to do, then it can be easy to say, hey, this group, whatever that is, the community, the college, brand loyalist, this is what we do. And that can then signal like, yeah, I want to get on board. I want to follow that behavior.
Mm-hmm. I want to just kind of underscore the importance of what you're saying in terms of these different motivations to belong to different social groups. I feel like sometimes we talk about consumers broadly and default to things like, well, people need it to be easy in order to do it, or people need it to be inexpensive in order to do it. And while I think there are truths in those insights, I think the real work to advance the circular economy is for anyone who's trying to create behavior change to really be clear on who are they trying to encourage the behavior change in, and understand them at a level of what is their identity, and what groups do they aspire to be part of, because that's really where the magic happens in terms of understanding how to message to someone what group they want to belong to. If you don't understand that, you're going to be flying blind.
Yes, absolutely. Identity is important in all aspects of life, but even when you're trying to get people to engage in more circular behaviors, if you can identify what identity they aspire to be, and signal to them that people that are holding that identity engage in this circular behavior, that I am suddenly more motivated to invest more effort, maybe pay a little bit more to fit in and belong to that group that I aspire to.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And I see that's where the interrelationship between both of your expertise here is so important, in that we need the entrepreneurs, we need the kind of the efforts of Brian, and new initiatives and new business models to be kind of forging the way, to be able to get those groups of people who are doing the behavior we want. But then we also need the work of insights people, academics, to say, then how do you get others to come along? How do you kind of use that social influence to encourage people with messaging, and strategies to say, hey, other people are doing this and you want to be part of this, and here are the benefits for being part of this. Karen, I want to give you the chance to also talk about what you have learned about encouraging people to repair things, and also why a brand might want to encourage their customers or users to repair something, given repair is such a big part of the circular economy that we're wanting to encourage.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I've been doing in some current research is looking at the kind of the default of a lot of consumers right now is just to automatically replace, dispose of things, right? We kind of have this default disposal mindset, which Brian's trying to fight in single-use items, but even in more durable goods like clothing, electronics, we still have this: once it breaks, throw it out. And we found that third-party repair services don't really alter consumers' likelihood to repair, but when brands offer a repair service, or they even tend to offer a brand certified, so it may not be the brand itself that you're taking it back to repair, but it's certified by Apple or Levi's or Dell to repair the product, that customers take that as a signal and they say, oh, the brand thinks there's value in repairing this. Maybe the default is not to throw it out, but to actually replace it. And this really is beneficial to brands. You might look at it and say, well, I'm going to decrease sales then, right? Because I'm not going to be selling as many new products. But it actually, we found when people throw away or replace, they're likely to replace with a different brand if the product breaks, right? Because it kind of didn't work for you. So I might try something different that time. However, if they are able to repair it with that brand, then they're actually more likely to maintain loyalty with that brand, right? Because it worked. And so you're not losing the market share to a competitor. You're actually maintaining that brand relationship for a longer period of time when you offer the repair options.
I love this so much because I can relate to it so deeply. I hope others can as well, which is, yeah, how often have you bought something from a company or a brand and it breaks, and then you just don't trust anymore. Mm-hmm. And so you're left with something that you kind of need to get rid of because it doesn't work, but you also then need to search out another brand because your trust has been broken. So I think that kind of repair learning is so interesting, given we really want to be developing repair behaviors. And so by having hopefully brands listening, that by really being upfront about the option and offering the option in a way that's kind of sponsored or very visibly tied to your brand is really important to actually get people to go through with repair. I think that's a really great opportunity.
Something that an incredible designer who also works for IDEO, who has helped us continually through our journey, shared with me, and she's, in her mid-20s, let's say, but she said for my generation, having less things is more freedom. And I think brands are already picking up on this and are already kind of understanding this new consumer base that's coming, that really cares about quality, that is interested in buying less things, and when they are spending their consumer dollars, they're doing so very intentionally. So I think reuse, circular models are going to be critical to the success of these brands as they evolve with the world, and particularly I think coming out of this phase we're in right now, where we've all been at home so much, and we've kind of been looking at all of the stuff we have, and it's probably the experience that we're after even more. So I think there's a wonderful opportunity to all help each other shift.
Yeah, I think, Brian, I think we touched on this as we prepared for this panel, in that the COVID moment does provide challenges to behavior change and reaching people, because people aren't in the same places that they normally are, where you might be able to reach them. Like for a Muuse, you were saying, we would normally put a return depot maybe in workplaces, but that's not where people are right now. So brands are and entrepreneurs are having to get creative in terms of how to reach people. But I do feel like there is a mindset of people really rethinking about what's essential to them right now, and potentially being open to new business models that they may not have considered pre-COVID. So it really is a moment to lean into. I'm gonna just be sharing now, because I've got some questions here about some of your research. I'm gonna start with something Brian wrote about his lessons in reuse with Muuse, which is beautifully written, and tons of great insight if you're interested in starting a reuse business. And then also an article in Discover magazine from Karen that highlights some of her research about how to encourage sustainable behaviors. So we do have just about 3 minutes left here. I will. There's a question here about cost, and I think it's really important, again, because we do get so many. I think there's a myth that being circular or sustainable is actually somehow more costly in every case, and maybe it is in some, but not in others. The question is, how do we convey to people that being environmentally friendly is not really as costly as they think? Brian, do you want to take that one?
Absolutely. I think it's almost practical sense. And if you just think about, okay, I'm going to make something in one part of the world. I'm going to ship it all the way across the world. I'm going to use it for 15 minutes. Now I'm going to ship it even further away, and I'm going to forget about it. Versus I'm going to make something, similarly, I'm now going to take it, I'm going to use it 500 to 1,000 times, and then I'm going to fully recycle it into the same product. When you look at those two types of models, I mean, one of them kind of stands out, but the challenge we're up against, and this was the same in renewable energy, which was where my first 13 years were spent. We're stepping into a certain set of systems and societies that have tremendous scale. So on our path to reach that scale, we might need a little economic help to get there. I mean, not only are we asking to change some consumer behavior, but it's difficult for us as a reuse company to come in and compete against like the lowest cost single-use coffee cup that's at like 6 or 7 cents. Now, when we get into the cup that's maybe made a little bit more thoughtfully, potentially could be recycled, or if we're into the bioplastics, we can easily compete with that. But as we get scale, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, our costs will actually be cheaper. But the path between here and there is the one that, that's going to take all of us really committing and supporting and putting our consumer dollars and our attention behind.
Yeah. So we have 1 minute left. I just want to thank so much the panelists and the great attendees for all your comments. and resources that you've shared. Again, I've shared both a resource from Karen and Brian in the chat. Please find them. I just want to close by saying that what I think I learned from both of you is that for new business models, you really need to think about some hooks, some actual positive messaging, incentives, tangible incentives to get people to get on board. Once you have a group of people who is doing that desired behavior, then you can use social norms to encourage other people who might want to be part of that group or aspire to be part of that front-running group to say, you can do this too. You can be part of this group as well. So both of your experience in kind of leading edge change and more social norms and kind of encouraging more of the masses really complementing each other in terms of the psychology of behavior change. And thank you so much, everyone, for being part of it today, and enjoy the rest of Circularity 20. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Blown away how many people joined this conference. Amazing.
I know. Look at that. Awesome.
Wow.
200, almost 300 people. Thanks, everybody.
Really well done, Lindsey. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks,
You as well. I wish we had hours more. Bye, guys. Thank you.
All right. Bye, all.
Bye.